I never imagined I'd be sitting here writing this out, but I guess I needed some kind of release. My wife Emily and I had just finished a week-long honeymoon in the countryside. We planned it for months, dreamed about it actually. We'd spent the days hiking, swimming in the lake, and falling asleep under a blanket of stars. It should have been perfect. But nothing's ever that simple, is it? From the moment we arrived at the cabin, I sensed something was off. Emily was more distracted than usual, constantly checking her phone, whispering under her breath. I brushed it off, chalked it up to excitement or maybe just her nerves. But as the days went by, her behavior grew more inconsistent. She'd disappear for long stretches, claiming she was getting some fresh air, but I caught her sneaking glances at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I remember one night, I was sitting outside on the porch, the cool night air nipping at my skin, when I saw her slip her phone into her pocket as she returned from the cabin's small bathroom. She looked around nervously, her cheeks flushed. I felt a twist in my stomach, like a warning bell going off. Something wasn't right. Then the day before we were supposed to leave, I found the messages. It was on her phone, an exchange of flirtatious texts with my best friend Jake. They'd been secretly meeting at the cabin and I'd been blind to it. The texts were full of sexual innuendos, promises, and a lot of "can't wait to see you again." My heart sank. I actually felt my chest tighten, like someone had punched me in the gut. I remember clutching her phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to throw it across the room, but I just stared at the screen, trembling. I read every word, every lie. Emily had been sneaking around for days while I was trusting her with everything. The betrayal hit me like a wave of ice water straight to the face. When she finally came into the room, I was already standing there, trembling with rage. She looked surprised, then guilty. "What's wrong?" she asked, voice shaky. I held up her phone. "Explain this," I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to cut through the quiet of the cabin. Her face paled. She stammered for a second, then burst into tears. "It was a mistake," she choked out. "It didn't mean anything. We didn't mean for it to happen, just a stupid fling. Please, I didn't want you to find out like this." That moment, seeing her cry, realizing I'd been played, was the beginning of a long, dark night. I felt something snap inside me. Trust was gone. Love felt like a fragile glass shattered into a million pieces. I wanted to believe she was sorry, but deep down I knew this wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal that cut too deep. I spent the rest of that night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The cabin's wooden beams seemed to mock me, creaking with every gust of wind. The worst part, I wasn't even angry at her, well, not entirely. I was furious at myself for not seeing the signs, for trusting her blindly. How could I have been so naive? And Jake, my best friend, was no better. I never expected him to do something like this. We'd been through thick and thin together. Now I felt like I didn't even know him. My stomach churned whenever I thought about how easily he'd crossed that line, how he'd used my trust to get close to my wife. I stared at her, trembling with a mix of heartbreak and fury. "I need time to think," I said coldly. "I want you gone when I wake up." Her sobs echoed in the quiet room, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I only felt a cold, rising resolve that things were about to change forever. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, I realized this wasn't just about cheating. It was about respect, something she'd shown she didn't value. This was the kind of betrayal that doesn't just hurt, it destroys everything. And I was done playing the fool. The next steps were clear in my mind, detailed, calculated. I'd gather everything, the evidence, the proof, and when the time came, I'd make her regret ever crossing that line. But first, I had to figure out exactly how I was going to do it. I had to plan it carefully. No impulsive moves, just cold, precise revenge. For now, I'd sleep alone, haunted by her tears and the silent promise I'd keep. Because when I confronted her again, it would be with the truth, and I wouldn't hold back. This betrayal was just the start. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been run over by a truck. My head was pounding and my stomach churned every time I thought about everything that had happened. The cabin was quiet, eerily so. Emily was gone and her side of the bed was cold. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but I could feel the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I knew I had to be methodical. I couldn't just lash out in anger or make a scene. First, I needed to gather all the proof, the messages, any evidence of their meetings, anything that could back up what I'd found. The idea that my best friend and my wife had betrayed me so thoroughly made my blood boil. I remembered her phone still being in the room. I quietly went through her bag, found her purse, and somehow managed to unlock it. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but I needed clarity. I scrolled through her recent texts and photos, trying not to feel sick, trying to keep my hands steady. That's when I found the photos she'd taken of Jake half-naked, smiling like they were sharing some secret between just the two of them. My stomach clenched. It was proof enough. I also found a series of messages, some explicit, others just flirtatious, all confirming what I'd suspected. It was enough to destroy whatever was left of my trust. I grabbed my phone, took screenshots of everything, and made sure I had a backup. While I was at it, I noticed her phone had some deleted messages. I knew how to recover them, been through enough tech stuff to know. I used a recovery app and pulled up a chat conversation that she'd tried to erase. There, I saw her telling Jake how much she needed him, and how she wished she'd met him before she married me. That last part hit me like a punch to the gut. I sat there, staring at the screen, my hands trembling. The betrayal was so deep I could feel it in my bones. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed a plan. I couldn't just come out swinging. I had to hit her where it hurt, in a way she'd never expect. I decided to wait until she came back. I wanted her to think she'd gotten away with it, at least for a little while. I brewed myself a cup of strong black coffee, trying to steady my nerves. Her bags were packed, but I figured she wasn't planning to leave just yet. She was probably trying to come up with some kind of excuse. When she finally returned, her eyes looked red and swollen. She avoided my gaze and sat down on the edge of the bed, fidgeting with her hands. I let her sit there for a moment, watching her squirm. Then I spoke, voice calm but cold. "So, Emily," I said, "I found everything. The messages, the photos, the secret meetings. You lied to me. How long has this been going on?" She looked at her hands, voice trembling. "It's not what it looks like. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was confused." "No, you weren't confused," I interrupted sharply. "You were sneaking around behind my back, planning to meet Jake while I thought we were having a perfect honeymoon. Do you even realize how much you've hurt me?" She broke into tears again, trying to speak, but I held up my hand. "Don't bother. I want you to leave today. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear your excuses. Just go." She hesitated, then finally nodded, grabbing her bag and heading for the door. As she left, she looked back at me, eyes glossy with tears. An image flashed in my mind, her crying, trying to look innocent, yet I knew the truth now. I stood there watching her disappear down the driveway, feeling the weight of betrayal settle deeper into my chest. But underneath the pain, a cold resolve was forming. I'd spent years trusting her, believing in us. That trust was gone now, shattered. She crossed a line that couldn't be erased. In that moment, I decided I wasn't just going to let her walk away. I'd make her regret this decision. She'd taken everything from me, my trust, my love, my hope for the future. Now I'd take back control. I pulled out my phone and started drafting a message to Jake. I wanted him to know I'd seen everything. I also started planning how I'd make her pay. Not with some petty revenge, something bigger, more calculated. I wanted her to feel the loss, the betrayal in every fiber of her being. That's when the idea struck me, something I could execute in a way that would burn her from the inside out. I'd been cheated on, yes, but I'd turn her own actions against her. I'd make her feel the loneliness she'd inflicted on me, make her question every moment she'd ever spent with Jake. That was the game I was about to play. I looked out at the quiet lake, the water shimmering in the morning light. It felt like the last piece of peace I'd get for a long time, because I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I was going to make her regret ever crossing that line, and I'd start by stripping her of everything she'd taken for granted, her peace, her comfort, her sense of safety. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew what I had to do, and I was ready to see it through. After she left, I stayed in that cabin alone, feeling the kind of cold emptiness that's hard to shake. I stared out at the lake, watching the ripples distort the reflection of the sky. My mind kept circling back to what I'd discovered, her secret messages, the photos, the lies. It was like a broken record, but each replay only sharpened my resolve. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. First, I needed to be smart. Emotional reactions wouldn't serve me now. I had to think several steps ahead. That meant gathering every piece of evidence that could support my plan, proof of her betrayal, her words, her actions. I wanted her to know I knew everything and that I was in control, even if I looked calm on the surface. While she was gone, I went through her things, looking for anything else that might come in handy, her diary, receipts, even her social media accounts. I was careful not to leave fingerprints or make it obvious I was searching. I found her secret stash of messages, hidden in a folder on her phone, and took screenshots. I also checked her email, her cloud storage, anything that could give me an advantage. Then I called Jake. I needed to hear his voice, needed to confirm what I already suspected. I dialed, and after a few rings, he picked up. "Jake," I said, voice low and steady. "We need to talk. I've seen everything. I know what's been going on." There was a pause, then he cleared his throat. "Look, man, I didn't mean for you to find out like this. I was stupid." "Stupid isn't enough," I snapped. "You used my trust, Jake. You knew I considered you my brother. How could you do this?" He hesitated. "It got out of hand. Emily's not the girl you think she is. She's just as lost as I am. We didn't plan for this to go so far. Save it." I cut him off. "You're both cowards. I want you to know something. You're not going to get away with this. I'm going to make sure you regret it for the rest of your lives." That conversation sealed it for me. I knew what I had to do, confront her with everything I'd gathered, but in a way that hit her where it hurt most, not just exposing her, but making her feel the consequences. Over the next few hours, I meticulously crafted my plan. I wanted her to believe. I was still in the dark, so I kept up appearances, masked my fury, while secretly setting everything in motion. I called the cabin's Wi-Fi provider, pretending to be her, asking for her account details. I needed access to her messages, her emails, everything she thought she'd hidden. Once I had control of her digital footprint, I started drafting the message I'd send her when I was ready. It would be blunt, cold, and final. I wanted her to see that I knew the truth, that I'd been watching her every move. She'd think she'd gotten away with it, but I was about to turn the tables. I also reached out to a private investigator, a guy I found online who specialized in infidelity cases. I paid him to dig deeper, to find any other hidden secrets, any other women, any financial discrepancies. I wanted to cover all my bases. While I waited for his report, I kept my mind focused, stayed in control. By evening, I was ready. I sat in the quiet of the cabin, laptop open, drinking a cold beer I'd brought for after all this mess. The feeling of satisfaction was slow to come, but it was there. I knew I had the evidence, the leverage. I just needed to send her the message, sit back, and watch her world come crashing down. I typed out the final words carefully, no room for mistake. It was a message that would begin the end of her game. I hesitated for a moment, then hit send. As soon as I clicked, a strange calm washed over me. I had the upper hand now. The seconds ticked by, feeling like hours. Then my phone lit up with a reply, her response. "I didn't mean for it to be like this. Please, let's talk." I smiled bitterly, knowing that was the beginning of her attempt to manipulate her way out of this. But I wasn't going to let her, not anymore. I was ready for whatever came next, because I knew deep down I'd finally taken back control. I'd exposed her, I'd made her see she wasn't getting away with it. And now, I'd sit back and watch her unravel. The game was on, and I was just getting started. That night I sat alone, staring at my phone, watching her reply again and again. Her words were pleading, full of regret and apologies, trying to reel me back in. I knew better. She thought she could charm her way out of this, that I'd forgive her or somehow forget. But I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I had already started executing my revenge, but I didn't want her to sense how far I was willing to go. I wanted her to feel like she'd lost everything, her husband, her best friend, her peace of mind. I kept my tone cold, detached, replying only with short, calculated responses, making her believe I was still uncertain. I wanted her to think she could manipulate me, to keep her dangling in the dark while I pulled the strings behind the scenes. I also reached out to Jake again, this time with a message. I told him I knew what he'd done, and I warned him that I had enough evidence to ruin him. I didn't threaten outright. I just let him know that I'd be watching, that he'd regret crossing me. I felt a strange satisfaction knowing I was controlling the situation. It was a slow, deliberate game, one I planned to win. Meanwhile, I had arranged for the private investigator to gather more intel. The report came back late that night, more secret meetings, financial irregularities, even a side affair Emily had hidden in her email. It was perfect. All my suspicions were confirmed and I had enough to make her pay. I decided I wouldn't confront her immediately. No, I'd wait for her to get comfortable, to let her think she was safe. That's when I'd strike. I'd deliver the final blow. But I needed something more, something that would hit her where she'd hurt most. In the quiet darkness of the cabin, I set my plan in motion. I used her own social media accounts, accessed through the passwords I'd recovered, to post a series of screenshots. I blurred her face but left her messages visible, mocking her, exposing her secret, making sure everyone saw her true face. I knew how social shame could cripple someone and I wanted her to face it. Next, I sent her a message, calm, precise. This is only the beginning. You're going to lose everything that mattered to you. Don't bother trying to deny it anymore. Her reply came quick, frantic. Please, I'll do anything, just don't ruin me. I barely responded. I wanted her to feel the pressure, to start realizing the gravity of what I was about to do. I didn't want her to think I was impulsive. I wanted her to know I was in control. As the night deepened, I looked out at the lake, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and cold determination. Betrayal of this magnitude isn't something you get over quickly. It festers, like a wound that refuses to heal. I knew I had to follow through with my plan, and I knew exactly what that was. Tomorrow, I'd make sure she understood that her lies had consequences, that her game was over. I'd call her bluff, show her I'd become the predator now, not the victim, because I'd been hurt enough. The trust I once had was gone, and I was going to make damn sure she paid for every second of it. The silence outside was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of water lapping against the shore. It felt like the universe was listening, waiting for her to realize what was coming. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of everything I'd done and everything I was about to do. I knew I had her cornered now. It was only a matter of time before she understood that her lies couldn't save her. And when she did, that would be the night I finally ended her reign of betrayal. The next morning, I woke up feeling a strange kind of clarity. Whatever emotional fog I'd been in evaporated overnight. I'd spent the night planning every detail of how I'd finally deliver the blow that would leave her truly shattered, emotionally, not physically. I knew I'd already done enough to expose her, but I wanted her to feel it, really feel it, in a way that couldn't be undone. I started by calling the private investigator again. His report confirmed what I suspected. She had been meeting Jake despite the digital breadcrumbs I'd uncovered. More than that, there were financial transactions, flirtatious gifts, secret payments. It was proof she'd been hiding a whole other life behind my back. I printed everything, laid it all out on my laptop. I wanted her to see it in black and white, piece by piece, how she'd betrayed me. I also crafted a message I was going to send her, one that would cut through anything she could say or do. It was cold, direct, unapologetic. I knew she'd try to manipulate her way out, but I didn't care. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about making her suffer, about making her realize the consequence of her actions. Before I sent it, I took a walk outside, the cold air biting into my skin. The lake was still, mirror-like, reflecting the gray sky. I thought about everything, the trust I'd lost, the future I'd imagined that was now gone. But I also felt something else: power, control. I was finally taking back what was mine. I sat back at the cabin and looked through her social media posts again. I decided to post the screenshots I'd taken, anonymized, blurred, so everyone could see her true character. I wanted her to be publicly humiliated, to understand that her lies couldn't be hidden forever. I watched as the notifications kept coming in, comments, shares, messages from mutual friends. Her reply to my message came a little later. "I'm sorry," she wrote, voice trembling. "Please just talk to me. We can fix this." I didn't even bother to reply. Instead, I sent the message I'd prepared. "You've lied, cheated, and betrayed everything we built. You think I'll forgive? You after all this, you're right, but not in the way you think. I pressed send and felt a strange calm settle over me. I'd done what I set out to do. I'd shown her that I knew everything, that I was in control now. I could see her unraveling, her bravado crumbling. It was almost satisfying, like watching a house of cards fall slowly, painfully. But I knew this wasn't over yet. I had one more move, the final act. I arranged to meet a lawyer that afternoon. I needed to start the process of divorce to make everything official. I didn't want to leave any room for her to manipulate her way back into my life. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her choices. That day, I handed over the keys to the cabin, the place where she'd thought she could escape and hide her lies. I didn't want her to have any reason to come back, to try and fix what she'd broken. As I handed her the keys, I looked her in the eyes and said, "This is goodbye. You lost me for good." She looked like she wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she turned and left without another word. Watching her walk away, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. That chapter was closing permanently. I sat in my car, watching her disappear down the road, and finally allowed myself to breathe. I'd taken back my power, and I knew I'd never trust her again. She made her choice, and now she had to face the consequences. Looking back, I realized that I was so blinded by love that I ignored the red flags, her distracted behavior, her secrecy, the way she'd been lying to me. But now I see things clearly. Trust isn't given lightly, it's earned. And once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. To anyone out there who's been betrayed like this, know that you're not alone. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's walking away, closing the door, and reclaiming your peace. Because in the end, nobody should ever stay with someone who doesn't respect or value them. I walked away from that cabin knowing I'd be okay. Because I'd learned one thing. No matter how much it hurts, sometimes you have to cut the poison out to heal. And I was finally ready to start healing. Weeks have passed since that day I handed her the keys and watched her drive away. At first, every moment felt like a fresh wound, hot, raw, unbearable. But slowly that ache dulled. The shock of betrayal was replaced by a strange sense of relief and, surprisingly, clarity. I'd taken the power back, and I'd learned some hard lessons about trust, love, and what I truly deserve. Living alone in the aftermath was difficult. The house was quieter, emptier, and every corner echoed with memories I now had to reframe. I kept my distance from mutual friends, choosing not to rehash everything aloud. Instead, I focused on myself, working out, reconnecting with old hobbies, and rediscovering what made me feel alive outside of that toxic relationship. One thing I realized was how much I'd allowed myself to overlook the warning signs. Emily's distracted phone checks, her secret meetings, the little lies, they all should have been red flags. But love can be blind, and I learned that trusting someone blindly is a gamble most of us can't afford. From now on, I promised myself I'd be more cautious, more vigilant. Love is a two-way street, and respect is the foundation. If that's broken, no amount of apologies can fix it. Looking back, I'm glad I kept my composure, kept my plan calm and cold. Revenge, if you can call it that, wasn't about hurting her, at least not in a petty way. It was about reclaiming my dignity and making her see that her choices had consequences. I wanted her to understand that betrayal isn't just a moment of weakness. It's a choice, and it ripples through every part of your life. I didn't tell anyone the full story for a while. I needed to process it myself first. But eventually, I shared my experience with a few close friends, people I trust to give honest advice. Their reactions were mixed but mostly supportive. Some told me I was better off without her, that I deserved someone who genuinely valued me. Others warned me not to dwell on the past, to focus on healing and moving forward. What's clear to me now is that I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret exposing her lies or taking control of the situation. Because sometimes, love isn't enough when mistrust is allowed to fester. I learned that the hard way, but I'll never forget it. As for her, I hear she's trying to rebuild her life, but I doubt she'll ever fully understand what she lost. I hope she feels the weight of her actions, though I doubt she'll ever truly grasp it. The pain she caused me isn't something she can undo, but I know I'll be better for walking away. So to anyone reading this who's been betrayed, Know this, it hurts. It might shake you to your core. But there's strength in leaving, in walking away from someone who doesn't respect or cherish you. Trust is fragile, but self-respect is resilient. And once you realize your worth, you'll never let anyone take that away from you again. I kept the scars, sure, but I also gained something else: freedom. The kind that comes when you finally stop chasing someone's validation and start valuing yourself. I'm healing, I'm moving on, and I'm finally learning to trust again, this time with my eyes open. And that, I suppose, is the most important lesson of all.